Okay, thanks everyone for being here this morning, and it's my pleasure. I mean, Antonio, the director of our institute, have to give this introduction, but it's my pleasure just to be here and introduce you Anthony Newman, a publisher of Elsevier. As probably all of you know, Elsevier is the largest company in the world dedicated to the published business. So Anthony has been a senior publisher for more than 20 years. He is in charge of ruling and governing around 20 journals, and he is the person who decides who is the editor and who not owns, but who dictates the rules of every journal. In this morning, he's going to give us two different talks. In the first talk, he is going to describe how to write a proper paper, how to construct a paper with tips and tricks about how to prepare that paper to get more chances of being published. And in the second talk, after the break, he's going to give us how are the rules to answer, to respond the reviewers, and how to be a proper reviewer. The plan is for this morning is 2 talks. The first talk is 2 hours until 11:30. We will have a coffee break. The coffee break is free, so it's free because you can go everywhere you wish, and around 12 we will come back here just for the second talk. Without more introduction, I'll give the word to Anthony.
Fine. Thank you, Jose. So thank you for inviting me to be here today. And as Jose was saying, the idea is to talk about how to get published, not just how to write the paper, but how to get it published. Because if you write it and it's not published, it never happened. So we've actually got to make sure that whatever you are writing gets published. I was here about 5 years ago doing a similar workshop, which was recorded in a similar way, but in the same room. This is an updated version of that one from 5 years ago. The one that's out there now on YouTube has had about 100,000 downloads. So it shows that it really is, there's a need out there for this information worldwide. It's easier, better in person. You can ask questions, but for those who can't get to one of these in-person workshops, the recording is a good substitute. So the talk is very simple: how to write great papers and how to get published. If you can't get good research, that's not really my problem. That's the problem of you and your professors or your supervisors to make sure your research is good enough to publish. So often people just don't understand how publishing works. And by understanding how publishing works, as my job today, you'll make a lot more confident so that when you do submit your paper, you know the processes and the procedures that will happen to your paper when it does get submitted and goes through the whole peer review process. So before I go any further, a quick question: who here has published a paper so far? Okay, a few. Who's trying to publish a paper? A few more, okay. Of those who published a paper, who's published more than 20 papers? More than 50? More than 100? 200? Okay. No, I'm serious. 200 is a magic number in life sciences anyway. For those who haven't yet started, it gets easier after the first 10 or 15, they tell me. But it's never really true. It really is always hard work writing a paper because it's the boring part. We love being researchers, but we've still got to finish off and publish. But at the same time, we're now doing the next bit of research, much more interesting, much more distracting. So it's really the perseverance to finish off that previous project and to publish it, and then keep on going with the next project. I'm not going to use the laser pointer much. I'm going to use the slide changer. So this is what you might think about peer review. If you can see, this is actually, it's a nice cartoon. It's by a guy called Nick Kim. He is a biologist in New Zealand, and he allows people to use his scientific cartoons free of charge everywhere in the whole world. He says, if you're brave, use my cartoons in your thesis. Which is fine, it's good. So it looks like you're the scientist going to try and get your paper accepted, and in between, all these people who used to be your friends, your colleagues, suddenly become hostile with their axes, their guns, the chainsaw, and the Grim Reaper at the end, just trying to stop you get published. That's what it seems like. It's not like that, but that's what it seems like. So how can we make these people put down their weapons and help you? That's the idea of this morning, to actually get you to interact with referees and use their examples, their suggestions, to make your paper better. So as Jose said, there's lots of things happening in the first talk. There's how to get published, looking at what are scientific journals and books, and what you're going to publish, what sort of papers, where you're going to publish, what sort of journal you're going to use, what sort of article type you're going to have, a short or a long or review or whatever. And then how the article is laid out in a traditional way or typical way, in case you're not sure of the best way of doing it. Then after that, it's talking about peer review process and how you interact with referees. A little bit about open access, a little bit about social media, and the idea being then a bit on publishing ethics. So that whole process takes a couple of hours. So we don't have time, say, for a break. The break is in 2 hours' time. If you need to have a bathroom break, then have to go and come back, basically. I'll keep on going. So firstly, we have peer review. And peer-reviewed journals is the best way forward we can do with this. And in the wide world of the scientific, technical, medical area, you've got around 2,000 publishing houses. And well, some are huge ones, like Springer or Wiley Blackwell or Elsevier. And some tiny publishing houses publishing one journal a year in hardback or something, and everything in between. Sorry. And what they're doing, these publishing houses are publishing around 28,000 peer-reviewed journals in that period. 1.8 million articles a year get written and published. Many more get written and don't get published. 1.8 million. So your scientific community worldwide in all scientific fields generates this 1.8 million articles a year. So that's what you as scientists do out there. What does that mean? It means that publishing houses have got to make sure there's enough journals for you to read, the articles you want to read, and to publish the work you've written. So that's the whole process. And what it is, it's almost a cycle as well we're doing. So a typical good publishing house, it could be any of the major publishing houses, happens to have an Elsevier logo here, it could be anything there. They have a job of actually processing these papers coming in. So firstly, the papers come in, and as the papers come in, the editors look at them and decide yes or no, are they good enough to go out for peer review or not. And then after that, it goes out for peer review, they get reviewed, the accepted ones get processed, edited, prepared, get printed or put online, and then they get looked at and then downloaded and cited and so on. The whole cycle goes around. In terms of numbers, in our particular publishing house, there's about 13,000 editors. Well, it's about 2,000 journals, so that's why we have so many editors. And about half of these are desk rejected, these submissions. They're not good enough. The ones that go out to the reviewers, then they're looked at by typically 2 to 3 reviewers per paper. And then some of those are accepted, 1/3 of a million a year. And then they get prepared, put online, and then they go to join their sort of peers with in Science Direct. And the same thing will happen, let's say, with Springer Link, and so on. So that's sort of the process. And what we found over the years, that so many people couldn't understand how it was working and making silly mistakes. Clever scientists, clever researchers doing silly mistakes. So that's why we came up with the idea of having some sort of tips and tricks workshop. So we've been doing these across Elsevier, across the world for a decade or more, 15 years. And it always surprises us how little people know about the publishing industry. It's supporting all your research works. It's a platform for you to publish in, but most people don't know how it works. So it's our job to teach you this so you better understand. If you become editorial board member or an editor of a journal, you get far better ideas, but as an ordinary, plain researcher, very important people publishing articles, you still need to know how the whole process works. So initially, everything was in print, and so before you guys were all here, of course. And then around about 1997 was the last year of print only, then it became electronic as well. And a very rapid conversion to electronic, first with flat PDFs and then more with HTML. So now, by now, 99% of the usage is online in life sciences. In some areas like medicine, it's about 95% online. Now that's important if you happen to be an author. Remember that every single person's going to see your article electronically, either online as a live electronic image, or they've saved it as a PDF and look at it later. So basically, all the richness of the electronic environment is what you need to make use of to make your paper more interesting to the reader. At the end of the day, it's the reader that's important, not you, the author. And of course, you've got different changing role of journals. So electronic access means much more visibility, much more downloads, much lighter looking of it. People don't read the whole article as they would have done in the library. They go to see bits of it and they look at a bit of research here, a comment here, a table there, a figure, and so on. We all do this. And of course, with this electronic systems, you also have electronic submission, makes it far easier, but also it makes it far easier to miss things out. If you were going to send everything in a big envelope, you'd be much more careful that everything was in the envelope. But around 5% of articles have things missing. You say there's going to be 4 figures, and you send 3 or 5 or something. Or that there's the conflict of interest statement was missing, or you didn't add the reviewers when you're asked to. All sorts of small little things, which is quite important to make sure that you cover all these things when you are going to do a submission. And of course, you have the new publishing models, the idea of open access. It's just an experiment, a very successful experiment, but still an experiment. And of course, delayed open access, open archiving. These are interesting things coming along. There's also much more other sorts of innovations being developed by various publishing houses. So that's all various things. We're trying to come up with things useful to you as scientists before you knew you needed them. That's the idea.